Chapter 611 The Body of a Demon God. 2. To Tianhe Shongren, Li Xiandao was a stranger. However, the Northern Loch Emperor was no stranger to him. He hated the person most in his life, the kind of person he would devour alive even if he met him in his dreams, without spitting out the bones. The reason why Emperor Baiqiu wanted to wipe out Yunfu and Tianling immortals was to completely control the northern underworld, make them work for him, and create a net to completely annihilate Li Xiandao. This plan reveals just how much the Northern Loch Emperor hates Li Xiandao. He really didn't expect that Tian Guangming was Li Xiandao's subordinate. More importantly, Li Xiandao isn't even here right now, yet he can control Jin Pinmei with just a word. That's incredible. Who is Li Xiandao? Tianhe Shongren asked with a puzzled expression. He searched his memory but still couldn't find such a person. Li Xiandao is the one who stopped me in the 9 heavens and 10 earths of the lower realm, and also the mastermind who murdered my 30,000 imperial guards. Emperor Baiqiu roared, his eyes bloodshot and his deranged appearance on full display. Master Tianhe looked on in astonishment and said incredulously, "How could someone from such a lowly place as the 9 heavens and 10 earths make Jin Pin not kneel down?" "No matter how he made Jin Pinmei, that spineless coward, kneel down, I will force him out today." Emperor Baiqiu stared coldly at Tian Guangming. As soon as he finished speaking, he threw a punch straight out of the air. Boom! Suddenly, a dazzling light appeared between heaven and earth, shimmering all around and enveloping everything, completely obscuring the sky. This was a furious strike from a peak celestial immortal, which even the heavenly light could not withstand. However, he did not resist, because Li Xiandao had told him that after Jin Pin did not kneel down, he was instructed to resolve this trouble. So Tian Guangming decisively said, "Jin Pin, my master said that you should solve this trouble. Kill the Northern Loch Emperor and this heavenly river immortal. In this way, the mistakes you made back then will be offset by a lot, and your crime will not warrant death." Really? Jin Pin's eyes lit up as he looked at Tian Guangming excitedly. "Of course it's true, it all depends on your skills." Tian Guangming nodded. Knock knock knock. Without saying a word, Jin Pin stood up, turned around, and slapped him across the face. Boom! In the sky, Emperor Baiqiu's punch was directly shattered by Jin Pin. The violent immortal energy transformed into energy that surged around, gathering dark clouds and swirling the heavens and earth, making people tremble with fear and their bodies shake. It was extremely terrifying. Bang bang bang. Before Jin Pin even made a move, he intimidated Emperor Baiqiu and Celestial River Master. He made no attempt to conceal his power. Shattering Emperor Baiqiu's fist was a minor matter. Then, he decisively attacked, unleashing the immortal laws he had comprehended, transforming into an invincible demon god. His phantom was vast and spread out, directly suppressing them. The Northern Loch Emperor's power originally covered half the sky and was incredibly strong. But now, thanks to Jin Pinmei's actions, his aura was completely destroyed and suppressed. Jin Pinmei then directly attacked the Northern Loch Emperor and Tianhe Shongren. He fought 2 opponents single-handedly, his expression cold and ruthless. The powerful energy within his body erupted like a dormant volcano, which was terrifying and astonishing. In particular, Jin Pinmei's slap made the Northern Loch Emperor tremble and made the heavenly river immortal roar in anger. "You've really angered me. Today I'll kill you first, then annihilate the Yun family. Go and slaughter your entire Jin family, and I'll make sure you're truly childless and without descendants." Tianhe Shongren said coldly, launching a powerful counterattack. He spread his 5 fingers, and a celestial river burst forth from between them. What flowed within was not water, but the laws of the great Tao, which, though seemingly water, were boiling. Boom! The surging momentum swept across the heavens and earth, directly crashing in and crushing the enormous phantom of the demon god, aiming to kill Jin Pinmei. This move is extremely terrifying. The powerful immortal laws from the Celestial River Master surged endlessly, transforming into sharp blades, knives, axes, swords, halberds, and other weapons, slashing down. "Die!" Tianhe Shongren roared. However, Jean Pinmei was not afraid. Instead of retreating, he advanced. A blood-red heart beat in his body, providing him with terrifying power, which directly gave Jean Pinmei a new body. Demon God's body. Jean Pin roared, offering no explanation, and simply unleashed his most powerful trump card. Demon Heart. Back then, for this very reason, he gave his purest soul essence to the Heaven and Earth Bank in exchange for this Demon God's heart. The Demon God's heart is incredibly powerful, terrifying, and awe-inspiring, causing people to tremble. Jean Pin only realized its immense power after replacing his own heart with the Demon God's heart. In 10,000 years, he made rapid progress, reaching the peak of the celestial immortal realm, and his strength even surpassed that of other peak celestial immortals. So when the deadline arrived, he was reluctant to return the Demon God's heart to Xiandao and the Heaven and Earth Bank, choosing silence as the best policy and dragging out the final timeline. He was bound to die. It's been almost 10,000 years since the breach of contract. According to the rules, he should have been completely destroyed, but Xiandao was new to the immortal realm and needed help, so he was given this opportunity. If this is postponed any further, Xiandao will no longer need him. Therefore, Jean Pin was determined to seize this opportunity. He dared not hold back and immediately launched a deadly attack. In his eyes, the Northern Loach Emperor and the Heavenly River Immortal are now the enemies who killed his father and mother, even more so than the hatred for his parents. You're the ones who deserve to die. Jean Pin roared and immediately attacked. Over the years, he had used the heart of the demon god to develop a supreme attack method, the body of the demon god. When the demon god's body was activated, Jean Pin did not shed his usual aged body. He quickly regained his youth and returned to his peak, with a handsome face and unparalleled aura. He pointed his fingers like a sword and directly pointed at the air. Rumble. The void cracked open, and the river of immortal laws was immediately torn apart. Jean Pin coldly said, "I haven't made a move because I didn't want to reveal my trump card, but now you're fortunate enough to see it." Knock knock knock. The void erupted, the river evaporated, and the golden-ranked demon god's body stared at countless immortal laws, rampaging like a war god, his fists striking the void, accurately finding the heavenly river immortal. Click. These two punches landed directly on Tianhe Shongren's chest, causing his celestial body to collapse on the spot, shattering like water. Ah! It hurts so much. Tianhe Shongren quickly conjured his body 100 meters away, his face contorted in a ferocious grimace, like a demon, terrifying beyond compare. How could this be? This shouldn't be the power of a celestial immortal. Celestial River Master looked at Jean Pinmei in despair, his body trembling violently, which was extremely terrifying. I never said that I only have the strength of a peak celestial immortal. If I weren't unable to break through, I would have already soared to the heavens long ago. Jean Pin said coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, his body dissipated on the spot, and a terrifying ball of immortal laws directly bombarded Tianhe Shongren. Boom. Tianhe Shongren's body stiffened, his eyes quickly turned gray, his aura weakened, and his life force dissipated. Under Jean Pinmei's attack, he was killed just like that. Is Chapter 612 the end? Part 1. Before Jean Pin could fully unleash his power, he shocked everyone present. His actions were extremely decisive. He severed Tianhe Shongren's river of laws, then turned and unleashed his full power as a demon god, striking Tianhe Shongren's body and causing him to tremble uncontrollably and cough up blood. This is not the power of a celestial immortal. Tianhe Shongren looked at Jean Pinmei in despair. His life force was rapidly draining away, and his body was falling into annihilation, with death spreading everywhere. I have never said that my strength is only at the celestial immortal level, although my level is at the celestial immortal level, Jean Pin said indifferently. He possesses the heart of a demon god, an extremely powerful thing. If Jean Pin hadn't refused to relinquish his core soul essence, he would be countless times more powerful than a celestial being. Even though he was stuck at the celestial immortal realm, his strength should not be underestimated. You killed me. The celestial court will not forgive you. Celestial River Venerable gritted his teeth. His life force was rapidly draining away, causing him unbearable pain. He could foresee that he would die in a minute, so he was terrified. Jean Pin looked at him coldly and said, "The Celestial Court may kill me, but you won't see it." Tianhe Shongren was so angry that he vomited blood. His body swayed and he knelt on the ground. The power in his body was rapidly draining away. He was too weak to fight Jean Pinmei anymore. Jean Pin ignored him and instead looked at Emperor Baiqiu, making his move directly. "I have already killed Tianhe Shongren. If I kill you, I can gain my master's forgiveness." Jean Pinmei's killing intent was intense and extremely powerful, boiling like flames, and it erupted all at once. Rumble. His immortal aura swept over them, accompanied by profound immortal laws. Each immortal law was extremely thick, like chains, forming a cage that enveloped the Northern Loch Emperor. Die! Jean Pinmei, driven by his own ambition, unleashed his murderous intent, fully utilizing the power of the demon god's heart. The Northern Loch Emperor could not escape and could only passively accept it, but he was trapped in the chains of law and could not break free at all. Break! Emperor Baiqiu roared in anger, taking out his immortal artifact, a high-grade immortal artifact, a pure white long sword. With a slight shake, the sword energy stretched for 30,000 miles, slicing fiercely through the air. The power of a top-grade immortal artifact is immense. It can even shatter immortal laws. This cage is very powerful, but it also showed flaws under the attack of the immortal artifact. Click. The power of the immortal artifact erupted at this moment, causing the cage of laws to tremble, and invisible ripples spread rapidly. Boom! 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 Emperor Baiqiu still showed his powerful side. As the ruler of the northern underworld, he could naturally collect many treasures. He had 2 high-grade immortal artifacts on him. One was the gate between 2 realms, and the other was this immortal sword. Sword of 100 spirits. This sword strike contained the souls of 100 primordial beasts, making it incredibly powerful and terrifying. So he unleashed a sword strike, and with the clang of the sword energy, 100 spirits appeared, challenging the chains of law. This is a terrifying scene, shocking to behold. The Northern Loch Emperor is protected by 100 spirits, making him incredibly powerful. This scene was also witnessed by Tianhe Shongren, who cursed before his death. "Kill this man, and I hope he will accompany me on the road to the Yellow Springs. I don't want to walk the road to the underworld, you can go instead." Jean Pin didn't witness any of this. Although he was surprised by the wealth of the Northern Loch Emperor, who possessed even top-grade immortal artifacts, he had nothing to fear. A top-grade immortal artifact is very powerful, but in his eyes, it is still not as good as the heart of a demon god. The power of the demon god's heart is far greater than that of a top-grade immortal artifact. Now the sword of 100 spirits has fully unleashed its power, and the souls of those 100 ancient primordial beasts roar in unison, shaking the heavens with tremendous force. The entire area, spanning thousands of miles, was filled with a terrifying aura. This was the power of the Northern Loch Emperor. He had completely revealed his trump card. However, such power could not frighten Jean Pinmei. He was currently in the form of a demon god, with a heart beating continuously, full of vitality, and his blood and chi permeating the void, vast and mighty, dyeing the void red, like a great demon being born, which was terrifying. The next second, Jean Pinmei threw a punch, his surging blood and chi like a raging torrent, his chilling laws like chains of a frozen river, resisting the 100 spirits' sword and fiercely suppressing it. Boom! The force of this attack was terrifying. With a loud bang, it crashed down. The 100 spirits' sword was powerful, but it trembled violently and bent, as it was suppressed by the golden rank. Rumble! This imposing aura was terrifying, and it also made Emperor Baiqiu glare angrily, completely unexpected that Jean Pinmei's strength was so formidable. Die! Emperor Baiqiu roared, unleashing his full power and activating the immortal spirit within the 100 spirit sword to fight it. The combined power of 100 primordial beasts, along with Emperor Baiqiu himself, suppressed Jean Pinmei. All of you are lowly primordial beasts, yet you dare to act wildly in front of my demon god's heart. Die. Jean Pin was not only powerful but also extremely ferocious. He opened his huge mouth and swallowed 100 primordial beasts whole in that instant. Click. Click. The sound of chewing startled the Northern Loch Emperor, who hurriedly fled, staring dumbfounded at Jean Pinmay. You devil! My 100 spirits sword! Emperor Baichio cried out in grief, his body trembling. The power of this superior immortal artifact was due to the souls of these 100 primordial beasts. Without them, the 100 spirit sword would be unworthy of its name and its power would be greatly reduced. His combat power would also be greatly reduced, and he would no longer be a match for Jean Pinmay. Opening its enormous maw, it devoured the souls of 100 primordial beasts. The golden-ranked demon god's heart erupted with powerful streams of blood, which surged into the demon god's body, chewing up the souls of the 100 primordial beasts and swallowing them into its belly, transforming them into the purest energy. Then, it suddenly opened its mouth and spat them out. Die! Jean Pin roared, his voice powerful and sweeping outwards, a pillar of light shooting into the sky, directly striking the Northern Loch Emperor. Rumble! The Northern Loch Emperor was struck by the soul of the 100 spirit sword, and his body disintegrated. He roared in shock and anger, trying his best to resist, but to no avail. His body exploded and he died on the spot. Jean Pin failed to kill the Northern Loch Emperor. He dispersed his demonic body, reverted to his aged state, and gasped for breath. He had exhausted himself trying to activate the demonic heart with his celestial immortal body. Fortunately, both Qianhe Shongren and Baichio Dijuan were killed, and he fulfilled the requirements of the owner of the Heaven and Earth Money House. After Jean Pin didn't kill anyone, he came up to Tian Guangming and said ingratiatingly, "I think I did a pretty good job." Tian Guangming opened his mouth, wanting to say that you did a fantastic job. However, to avoid making Jean Pin arrogant, he said calmly, "Not bad, nothing special. I'll take you to see the master later." "Yes, thank you, sir." Jean Pin was not overjoyed, and treated Tian Guangming, who was only at the true immortal realm, with utmost respect. The people in front of the Yun mansion stared blankly for a long time. After a while, the heavenly spirit immortal said awkwardly, This is it?" Chapter 613 80,000 Years of Slavery. Part 2. What was thought to be a major disaster turned out to be a hasty and unsatisfactory ending. What was supposed to be a major battle turned out to be so simple that they didn't even have to lift a finger and simply watched from the sidelines. Jean Pinmay, the ancestor of the Jean family in the northern underworld, is so terrifying. He killed the people of the immortal court so easily, which surprised even Lord Yun. But what was even more surprising was that Jean Pin was just a docile ant in front of Tian Guangming, completely lacking the domineering aura he had shown when he killed Qianhe Shongren and Baichio Dijuan. Lord Yun and immortal Tian Ling both knew that this was because of the mysterious master behind Tian Mingguang, Li Xiandao. Although he did not come, Li Xiandao's fame still circulates here. Upon seeing this, Yun Tianxia asked in surprise, "Are you going to see the master?" Tian Guangming nodded and said, "I need to take Jean Pin to see the master. He must await the master's judgment." "I'll go too," Yun Tianxia said immediately. When Lord Yun and his wife saw this scene, they exchanged a glance. Although they were worried, their son had recognized someone else as his master, which, to put it bluntly, meant he had become a slave. However, this master was so terrifying that they dared not say anything more. After all, Yun Tianxia has grown up and knows how to take responsibility for his own affairs. "Come along if you want," Tian Guangming said indifferently. "Now that Emperor Baichio and Celestial River Immortal have been killed, you should be able to handle the rest of the Imperial Guards." "We'll be leaving now," Tian Guangming said to Lord Yunfu and Celestial Spirit Immortal. "We can handle it," Lord Yun said solemnly. Although Tian Guangming was only at the peak of true immortal, Lord Yun dared not disobey him. After all, Jean Pin stood obediently to the side, not daring to even breathe loudly. Seeing this, Tian Guangming, along with Jean Pinmay and Yun Tianxia, left the Yun mansion, traversed the void, crossed space, and arrived at Lushan, entering the Heaven and Earth Bank. Inside the Heaven and Earth Bank, after breaking through to the celestial immortal realm, Xiandao descended from the inheritance hall and returned to the trading hall. He was waiting for Tian Guangming to return with Jin Pin, but he didn't. Although Jin Pin disobeyed orders and killed Tianhe Shongren and Beiqiu Dijuan, his mistakes were not forgiven. Xiandao merely spared his life. The merit of killing Emperor Beiqiu and Master Tianhe could not outweigh the mistake of breaching the contract. Therefore, Xiandao looked coldly at Tian Guangming and Yun Tianxia, who were carrying gold-grade items, but did not enter. Jin Pinmei, after more than 10,000 years, once again stepped into the Heaven and Earth Money House. He was both excited and nervous because he had violated the contract and didn't know what punishment he would face. Tian Guangming and Yun Tianxia were extremely excited. Having witnessed how Xiandao had not even appeared but had managed to frighten Jin Pin into kneeling down with just a few words, their admiration for Xiandao had reached its peak. Upon entering the trading hall, Tian Guangming and Yun Tianxia saw Xiandao's tall figure and excitedly knelt down on one knee, shouting, "Master, we're back." Xiandao nodded slightly and said, "Get up." Tian Guangming and Yun Tianxia were still excited, but they obediently stood up and looked at Xiandao with admiration. Xiandao didn't look at them, but calmly looked at Jin Pinmei standing outside the door. At this moment, Jin Pinmei felt like a child who had made a big mistake and was about to see the teacher, filled with anxiety and trepidation. He completely forgot that he was a master at the peak of the celestial immortal realm. He completely forgot that he was an ancestor over 20,000 years old. He felt no pride whatsoever in front of the Heaven and Earth Bank, because everything he has now, was given to him by the Heaven and Earth Bank. So when Xiandao looked over, even though his gaze was as calm as still water, it was like a raging storm in Jin Pinmei's heart, capable of killing him with a single crash. Under Xiandao's gaze, Jin Pin, trembling with fear, regret, and worry, knelt down and said, "Greetings, Master of Heaven and Earth Bank." Xiandao remained non-committal, not agreeing to his words, but coldly said, "You're quite something, aren't you? You signed the contract yourself, and then you broke it." Jin Pinmei trembled, his face full of bitterness. Then he knelt on the ground and said in an extremely humble manner, "I have made a grave mistake. Please punish me, Master." You know you've made a big mistake, and your attitude in admitting it is quite sincere. Since ancient times, very few people who break the contract of the Heavenly Bank have survived. You killed Emperor Beiqiu and Master Tianhe before, which can be considered a meritorious service. Therefore I will not kill you, Xiandao said calmly. Thank you, Master. Thank you for your great kindness and compassion. Jin Pin cried with surprise, having waited for these words for a long time. You may be spared the death penalty, but you cannot escape punishment. Today you must pay the price for violating the contract, Xiandao said calmly. I'm willing to pay any price, Jin Pin said firmly. This was his only chance to redeem himself, and he had to seize it. Your cultivation level is only at the celestial immortal realm, but your strength surpasses that level. Therefore, from this moment on, your life and fortune are entirely in my hands. From this moment on, serve me for 80,000 years. After 80,000 years, you will be free, Xiandao said coldly. Whether or not he has received the gold rank depends on his strength. Once Xiandao gives him the purest part of his soul essence, he can break through to the heavenly immortal realm, and he will be the most powerful person under Xiandao at this stage. There is such a person who, in the northern underworld and in the immortal realm, can continue to expand the business of the Heaven and Earth Bank. Xiandao didn't even consider Jin Pin's talent. Even Lamo, the least talented among his subordinates, was better than him. At least Lamo was learning battle formations from the ancient war book and was progressing very quickly. If Jin Pinmei didn't possess a demonic heart, his abilities would be greatly diminished. But it is precisely because of this demon god's heart that Xiandao needs him. After saying all this, Xiandao looked at Jin Pinmei with a very calm expression. 80,000 years as a slave. Upon hearing this condition, Jean Pin didn't feel humiliated at all. He raised his head in surprise, looked at Li Xiandao with joy, and shouted, "Master, please accept my bow." Knock knock knock. His forehead slammed solidly into the ground, making a sound that echoed around, showing how much force Jean Pin had used. His face was beaming with joy, his heart leaping with delight. He was overjoyed that the owner of the Heaven and Earth Money House would take him as a slave, even if it were 800,000 years, let alone 80,000. "Master, from this day forward, Jean Pin Mei will serve you wholeheartedly and take your commands as the sole direction of my efforts." Jean Pin Mei's voice rang with joy. It was a great blessing for him that his master accepted him. Jean Pin never dreamed that such a good thing would happen to him. Tian Guangming and Yun Tianxia exchanged a glance, both feeling a sense of pressure. This Jean Pin Mei seems to be very good at flattery, and he's also very powerful. He'll definitely steal their spotlight next. No, we have to try harder. Tian Guangming and Yun Tianxia each made up their minds. Chapter 614 The King of Men. Part 1. Li Xiandao felt much more at ease knowing that Jean Pin hadn't been a slave for 80,000 years. Jean Pin Mei's talent is not high. He relies solely on the demon god's heart. If Li Xiandao takes back the demon god's heart, he will lose his special abilities. Therefore, the future of Tiandi Qianzhuang does not belong to him. The future of Tiandi Money House belongs to Tian Guangming, Monk Tianxin, the Prince of the North, Lucifer, and others. They haven't grown up yet at this stage, and they need Jean Pin to support them. Once they get through this period, they will grow up and Tiandi Qianzhuang will be able to expand in all directions. Li Xiandao waved for them to leave and get some rest, then went to find Shao Qi. He has now broken through to the celestial immortal realm and possesses 1,000,000 celestial immortal laws, which is an extremely terrifying thing. Many peak celestial immortals do not even have that many celestial immortal laws. The arrival of Jean Pin Mei gave Li Xiandao a lot of confidence, letting him know that he could now start developing the Heaven and Earth Bank in the immortal realm. For the past 2 months since entering the immortal realm, Li Xiandao and his subordinates have been biding their time. Now he can finally step forward and say that the Heaven and Earth Bank is ready to expand in the immortal realm. With the Northern Loach Emperor killed, no one knew that the Heaven and Earth Money House had arrived in the immortal realm, and no one was chasing after him. Li Xiandao could remain hidden behind the scenes and control everything. Li Xiandao was very experienced in this regard. He found Shao Qi and told her his thoughts. After listening, Shao Qi nodded and said, "This is a good thing. Tiandi Qianzhuang can continue to develop. I will notify these pocket watches to find their owners and come to trade." "The problem is that we don't have much to trade right now," Shao Qi said worriedly. "The treasury of the Heaven and Earth Bank is now completely empty." Li Xiandao smiled confidently and said, "Our treasury is empty right now, but we don't have any Jean Pin. He is the ancestor of the Jean family and has been a slave to me for 80,000 years. All the wealth and treasures of the Jean family are mine." Shao Qi looked at Li Xiandao with a half-smile and said, "Well done, Mr. Li, you've passed." Li Xiandao chuckled and said, "Now that I've passed the test, may I keep a few maids?" Shao Qi's expression changed as she stared at Li Xiandao sharpening his fangs and said, "You can give it a try." Li Xiandao laughed and said, "Just kidding, don't take it to heart." Shao Qi snorted and said, "Some jokes shouldn't be made carelessly." Li Xiandao turned and left. Shao Qi was in some danger. Looking at her for some reason, Li Xiandao felt very uneasy. After discussing it with Shao Qi, Tiandi Money Exchange officially began receiving new guests. The Heaven and Earth Bank released 1,000 pocket watches at once, all of which were Li Xiandao's targets. Fortunately, Li Xiandao had previously unsealed the 7th mountain peak, otherwise there wouldn't have been enough pocket watches. Among these 1,000 pocket watches was the one that Li Xiandao had made himself. All the other pocket watches were blood red, but Li Xiandao's was green, which stood out. Li Xiandao watched as the pocket watches were released, silently anticipating the arrival of new guests. The northern underworld is a vast holy city situated high in the sky, frequented by extremely powerful immortals. Only immortals can enter this holy city, which shows how powerful it is. In the northern underworld, this is the only neutral place, belonging to no faction. It is a gathering place for independent cultivators, and fighting is not allowed here. Several celestial kings reside in the holy city, and even the celestial court forces led by Emperor Baichio dare not provoke it. Everyone keeps to themselves and lives in peace. At that moment, a middle-aged man with a blank expression walked into the holy city. He was tall and imposing, but he looked around blankly, not knowing what his goal was. He was a dead man who awoke from the depths of the Yellow Springs Road of the corpse-driving sect. No name, no heartbeat, no memories, no past, and no future. He stumbled into the holy city, but didn't know what to do. He had some immortal crystals on him, which were stolen by someone who tried to rob him but ended up being robbed instead. The world is vast, yet I have nowhere to go. I look around, sword in hand, my heart filled with confusion. Who am I? He asked himself. After arriving in the holy city, he did not continue to wander, but settled down here. He used the little immortal crystal he had to buy a courtyard and began to live there peacefully. He still didn't know his own name, so he simply gave himself a name. Nothingness. It means that one's past is nothingness, and one's future is nothingness. Since everything is nothingness, then it is called nothingness. The place that Void frequents in the Holy City is the Holy City Academy. The academy is open to the public free of charge. As long as you follow the rules, you can enter. He would spend the entire day reading all sorts of books. He didn't look at cultivation techniques, but rather at various miscellaneous books, common sense about life, the history of the immortal realm, and so on. These are the things he wanted to see, and it was after seeing these things that he gained a good understanding of the present era. I must be a very, very old person, not belonging to this era, Suwu guessed after returning home from reading the book. Everything in this era felt foreign to him, but when he saw the historical records from 100,000 years ago, he actually felt a sense of familiarity. This feeling of familiarity was quite inexplicable. He began to search through historical records from 100,000 years ago to find out what it was that made him feel this familiarity. Many things from 100,000 years ago have been recorded, vividly described in words, creating a very strong visual image. After reading it, Suwu felt nothing, which he also found strange. Until that day, he saw a name. A name from 100,000 years ago, with little recorded information, summarized in just one sentence, but he was immediately stunned. The King of Men rose from humble beginnings, fought against the heavens, quelled the darkness, and died peacefully in his old age. This one sentence, seemingly unremarkable, suddenly stirred a power within him, dispelling the dense aura of death and leaving him with an indescribable feeling. It was as if he knew this king. But he clearly doesn't remember anything. Who is the King of Men? Why did he feel a sense of familiarity? Why was he so excited and had such complex thoughts after seeing this name? Who is he? Filled with doubt, Suwu sat in his courtyard, deep in thought, his mind blank, still unable to come up with anything. This made him feel terrible, like he had a bad cold. His nose was blocked, he couldn't breathe, his body felt numb, and he almost fell over. Tick-tock. Tick-tock. To stop himself from feeling so bad, Void took out his blood-red pocket watch and squeezed it hard. Heaven and Earth Bank, I'd like to see if you really know everything. Void looked at the broken pocket watch with a hint of expectation. The next second, the world before his eyes shattered, and everything turned into Mount Sumeru, like a mirage. His body vanished into the void like water. Chapter 615 Your Life Belongs to Me. Part 2. After discussing it with Xiao Qi, Li Xiandao and Tiandi Money Exchange decided to receive new guests. In less than a quarter of an hour, guests arrived. When Xiao Qi told Li Xiandao the news, Li Xiandao asked curiously, "Who is this guest?" "It's that living dead you've been longing for," Xiao Qi said. Li Xiandao's eyes lit up, and he said, "Is it him?" "Yes, he's given himself a name now, Nothingness," Xiao Qi nodded. "All right, let him in. I'll wait for him in the trading hall." Li Xiandao became excited. This person's background was so complicated, and Li Xiandao was very concerned about him. In the trading hall, Li Xiandao changed his clothes and sat in the hall, his face cold and indifferent, looking at the entrance. Xiao Qi appeared at the door, followed by a middle-aged man who looked around warily. Especially when he saw Li Xiandao, he was greatly shocked. After emerging from the road to the underworld, Li Xiandao was the first person he couldn't see through, like layers of mist enveloping him, drawing him in and making it impossible for him to extricate himself. This is very abnormal, which can only mean that Li Xiandao is very powerful, so powerful that nothing can match him. Therefore, Su Wu focused his mind and became extremely vigilant, not daring to be careless. In his mind, Li Xiandao's image was elevated to an unparalleled level. What he didn't know was that Li Xiandao had only just broken through to the celestial immortal realm, and the reason he couldn't see through it was all thanks to the Heaven and Earth Bank. "Are you the owner of the Heaven and Earth Bank?" Su Wu asked as he walked in. "That's me. Welcome to my Heaven and Earth Bank. May I ask what you wish to trade?" Li Xiandao nodded, acknowledging his identity, and asked, "Your pocket watches tell me that they can be used to trade for anything in the world. Is that really true?" Su Wu looked at Li Xian with suspicion. "As long as you're willing to pay the price, nothing will be a problem." Li Xiandao's tone was calm, but it was precisely this calm tone that carried immense confidence. I want to know my origins." Void opened its mouth, struggling to speak several times, but finally managed to say it. Li Xiandao gestured and said, "Please sit down. Tell me your question and your background first." Su Wu sat opposite Li Xiandao, with a table between them. Unlike Li Xiandao, Su Wu remained calm and composed as he watched. Su Wu, however, was unsettled. Looking at Li Xiandao, he said, "I don't know my origins. I am a person without a past." Li Xiandao already knew, and he asked on purpose, wanting Su Wu to say it himself. "Continue," Li Xiandao said calmly. "I've lost all my memories, I've forgotten myself, and I don't even know what my goals are. The world is vast, but I have nowhere to go," Void said dejectedly. "Can't remember anything?" Li Xiandao asked. "It's all empty, and I feel out of place in this era. It seems like this isn't my era, and I'm not used to it at all," Void sighed. Li Xiandao looked at him and said, "You are out of step with this era, but that's nothing to worry about. I can explain it to you for free." "What explanation?" Su Wu looked at Li Xiandao with a puzzled expression. "Because you are a dead man, the fate of the dead is to be buried in the yellow earth. Instead of continuing to be active in this world, you feel out of place in it," Li Xiandao explained. Su Wu looked incredulous and asked, "Are you saying I'm a dead man?" Li Xiandao nodded. "Absurd. I'm sitting right here. How could I be a dead man?" Void sneered. He simply did not believe Li Xiandao's words. He had come back from the dead and crawled out of the yellow springs. How could he be a dead man? Li Xiandao wasn't annoyed by the questioning. He stood up and asked, "You don't believe you're a dead man?" Void nodded and said, "How could I be a dead man when I'm talking to you like this?" Li Xiandao walked to Su Wu's side, pointed his finger precisely at Su Wu's dantian, and said, "From now on, you will listen to me. I will tell you with facts that you are a dead man." Void sneered. "I will listen to you. I hope you won't be embarrassed later." Li Xiandao didn't argue with him. There was no point in arguing. Doing something was much simpler than saying something. Seeing it with your own eyes is better than being convinced by me. "Relax your body," Li Xiandao said calmly. Su Wu silently relaxed his body. He didn't trust Li Xiandao, so he was very obedient, hoping to make Li Xiandao lose his composure. Unfortunately, the moment he relaxed, a surge of life force erupted from Li Xiandao's fingertips and flowed directly into the Void's body. Rumble. In an instant, a massive wave surged forth from the depths of the Void body, from the limbs to the bones. This was a grey wave, carrying a dense aura of death, which instantly spread and erupted, devouring the life force that Li Xiandao had channeled into it. Knock knock knock. The dense aura of death stunned Su Wu. He stretched out his hand, which was indeed the hand of a dead man, deathly white, without any warmth or blood. His body slowly stiffened. I really am a dead man. Void was genuinely surprised. He thought that he had crawled out from the depths of the underworld and had been resurrected, but now he realized that he had not come back to life and was still a dead man. It's just that he, being a dead man, can move around freely. Unlike other dead people, the death energy in his body completely suppressed his life force, but he was still essentially a dead person. Now you believe me, right? Li Xiandao said calmly as he sat back down in his seat. Su Wu nodded, his temper gone, and obediently asked, "What should I do now?" Li Xiandao smiled slightly and said, "You shouldn't ask me what to do, you should ask your own heart what it wants to do." With a slightly stiff hand, Void pressed against his heart. After a moment of silence he said firmly, "I want to come back to life." Come back to life, eat, drink, and relieve yourself like a normal person, instead of being filled with death and having your body stiff. Sure, I can dispel your death aura, but what can you offer in return? Li Xiandao asked. This is your life. I dispelled the death energy and you came back to life. What can you give me in return for this life? Li Xiandao added. Su Wu looked at Li Xiandao, reached out and touched his body, only to find that he had no money. He used the little bit of immortal crystal he had to buy a courtyard when he was in the holy city. And now, he is all alone, with nothing at all. He can't afford any price. Su Wu looked at Li Xiandao awkwardly, opened his mouth and said, "Can I pay in installments?" Li Xiandao's lips curled up and he said, "Sure, but if we're going to do installments, you'll have to come up with something for the down payment." Emptiness was even more awkward, and he said, "I can't produce it. I think you have a good life. I'll save your life, and then your life will belong to me, okay?" Li Xiandao asked. One Confucian Taoist fantasy novel. I recommend a fantasy novel with a Confucian and Taoist theme. It's a new book by an author with over 10,000 subscriptions. The title is The Confucian God Above. If you're interested, you can search for it and check it out. I forgot about the recommendation you asked me to make yesterday. I feel bad for letting you down. Everyone should check it out. It's a new book by a big name with over 10,000 average daily views. It can't be bad. I haven't been updating as much lately, that's my fault. I'll speed it up. That's all for now. See how I do tomorrow. This chapter is being updated. Chapter 616 The Origin of the Human King. Part 1. Su Wu looked at Li Xiandao, and this request silenced him. This life, once saved, belongs to Li Xiandao and the Heaven and Earth Money Shop, not to him. That sounds really hard to accept. But upon closer reflection, without the Heaven and Earth Bank's rescue, he wouldn't have survived. The dense death energy within him would eventually erupt and engulf him, at which point even a god couldn't save him. Nothingness itself is very powerful. It wants to live a second life, so it chooses to live towards death. However, the corpse-driving faction ruined his plan, dug him up, and used various methods to refine him into a corpse king, shattering his hope of living a life of death. The only ones who can save him now are the Heaven and Earth Bank and Li Xiandao. Therefore, Li Xiandao's request is not excessive. Li Xiandao quietly looked at the void and made his request, then let the void decide whether to agree. If I agree to your request, will I become your slave, at your mercy? Void asked. Li Xiandao shook his head and said, Don't think like that. I have many subordinates, and I don't need you. I have no intention of making people my slaves. I prefer a win-win situation to one-sided exploitation. Su Wu looked at Li Xiandao with suspicion, unsure whether to believe him or not. You can consider this our cooperation. You signed a contract and are nominally my subordinate, but you have gained your life and I have gained your loyalty. As long as you don't betray me, then everyone is happy, Li Xiandao continued. Void was persuaded and said, I am all alone, with no ties to the world, so I don't care whether I sign this contract or not. However, I have a few requirements. Li Xiandao calmly said, "You speak." "The request isn't unreasonable. We should grant it. After all, if you want sheep to run, you have to feed them some grass. However, if the demands are excessive and harm Li Xiandao's interests, then he cannot agree to them. I hope you can help me find my past and let me know who I am." Su Wu said earnestly. He had chosen this name himself and had no sense of identity with it. He still wanted to know who he was and where he came from. Li Xiandao smiled and said, "No problem." Void continued, "My second request, and also my last one, is that I want you to help me find someone and gather information about them. I want to know." Li Xiandao raised an eyebrow and asked, "Who is it?" "The King of Men," the Void declared emphatically. When he said the name, Su Wu's heart trembled with excitement. He must find out who the King of Men is. Li Xiandao nodded and said, "No problem. As long as this human king ever existed, I will help you find him." Seeing this, Su Wu made no further demands and said, "Then I have no more questions." Li Xiandao snapped his fingers, and Shao Qi handed him the prepared contract. "Take a look. If there are no problems, sign it." Li Xiandao glanced at the contract and then handed it over. The contract was filled with dense writing, clearly outlining the rules and regulations. The gist of it was that Li Xiandao would bring Su Wu back to life, and Su Wu would have to serve Li Xiandao and would not disobey his orders. As for the two requests he made, those were to be fulfilled by Li Xiandao. They were agreements between master and subordinate, not things that Li Xiandao was obligated to complete. Li Xiandao was careful about this, just in case he couldn't find the void of the past, which would be awkward. The contract was a blur of dense text, making his eyes dizzy, but every clause seemed to be correct. Su Wu wanted to emphasize those two requests again, but Li Xiandao said, "Don't worry, in order to get you to serve me wholeheartedly, I will do my best to get these two requests done for you." After this explanation, there was a sense of emptiness and silence. Nothing could be said, and the only option was to sign. After writing down his name, Su Wu looked at Li Xiandao with a silent expression. He was stern and not good at talking, standing silently in front of Li Xiandao. "From now on, you will live in the Heaven and Earth Money House. Focus on your cultivation. I'll let you know if I need your help," Li Xiandao said. Nothingness nodded. "By the way, Shao Qi, do you know about the human king?" Li Xiandao asked curiously. He had just arrived in the immortal realm and knew nothing about its inhabitants. He didn't even know whether the human king was male or female. Like Su Wu, he was completely bewildered. But Xiaoqi is different. She has existed for a long time and knows a lot. "I seem to have heard of him, a peerless king born for the human race, revered as the human king," Xiaoqi said after thinking for a moment. "The peerless king of the human race?" Li Xiandao asked in surprise. His empty eyes looked at Shao Qi with a hopeful light. "I don't know much either. The human king only appeared for a short time, just 1,000 years. From the time she became famous to the time she disappeared, she was only active for 1,000 years. So I don't pay much attention to her affairs," Shao Qi said, shaking her head. "What does this king of men look like?" Li Xiandao asked. Su Wu stared at Shao Qi without blinking. "Beautiful. Very beautiful," Shao Qi emphasized. "The human king is a woman?" Li Xiandao looked at Shao Qi in surprise. It wasn't that he thought it was wrong for a woman to be a woman, but rather that the name human king didn't sound like a woman's name. "Yes, the human king is a woman, a very heroic woman. I only started paying attention to her because she's a woman. Otherwise I wouldn't know this now," Shao Qi said with a smile. "The human king is a woman. Why are you looking for her?" Li Xiandao asked Su Wu. Su Wu said in a daze, "I don't know her gender, but I know her personality. Just hearing her name makes my blood boil, as if the name is engraved in my blood." Li Xiandao joked, "Could it be your enemy?" Void shook his head. He didn't know. "All right, you can go now. Take a good rest for a while." I will help you expel the death energy from your body, and then you will be able to come back to life. I hope your memories will come back to life as well, Li Xiandao said. Su Wu rose to take his leave and departed from the trading hall. The empty trading hall was now empty except for Li Xiandao and Shao Qi. Li Xiandao looked at Shao Qi and asked, "You really don't know anything more about the human king?" "I don't know. If you want to know, you should go to Jixia Academy. It's the largest academy of the human race, with more books than our universal library. It must contain information about the human king, and it's the most comprehensive one," Shao Qi reminded Li Xian. Jixia Academy. Li Xiandao murmured. "Yes, this is the holy land of the human race. It is full of human leaders. In the immortal realm, there are many races, and there are many that are more powerful than the human race. The human race is just one of them. The Jixia Academy is responsible for protecting the interests of the human race, as well as for inheritance, reproduction, education, and so on," Shao Qi said. Chapter 617 Death by a Finger. Part 1. The Jixia Academy of the human race contains records about the human king, but Li Xiandao certainly can't go there now. He sighed and said, "The most urgent task is to dispel the death energy in the void's body. If the death energy erupts and spreads out, I will have breached the contract." Once the death energy within Su Wu completely erupts, even a god would be unable to save him, and once he dies, it can be determined that Li Xiandao has violated the contract. Since Li Xiandao promised to revive Su Wu, and Su Wu died, it was naturally considered that Li Xiandao had broken his promise. Shao Qi said, "To revive Su Wu, we need to dispel the death energy within his body. This death energy permeates his body, so we need to set up a large array to guide it out." Li Xiandao nodded and said, "I'll go ask the ancient war book later. It should know some guiding formations, the top secret kind." "You have the formation, but where do you put the death energy?" Shao Qi asked Li Xian. "What do you mean?" Li Xiandao asked, puzzled. "The death energy within Su Wu's body must be very dense. He is quite powerful, considered a strong person in the immortal realm. Moreover, after facing death and being refined into a corpse king, his death energy is even more concentrated," Shao Qi reminded Li Xian. Li Xiandao frowned. The death energy was too dense. Once it was released, it would spread everywhere. If an ordinary person inhaled a breath of death energy, their life force would be immediately extinguished, and they would become a living dead. Even cultivators, if they absorb such death energy, will be affected and their death will be accelerated. Even those at the true immortal level will find it difficult to escape the fate of being tainted by death energy. Li Xiandao was naturally not worried about himself, but he did not want to release death energy for no reason and then implicate others. "By the way, the place we're in right now is perfect for releasing death energy," Li Xiandao suddenly remembered, realizing that he was currently in the middle of several cemeteries. Mount Lu is vast, divided into 4 parts, with a 6th-grade immortal vein at its base. It is a blessed land, but the 4 major powers have turned it into their ancestral land, where countless ancestors are buried. Therefore, the atmosphere of death is also very strong here. By releasing the death energy from the void's body here, Li Xiandao can fulfill his promise to the void. Thinking this way, Li Xiandao became excited and immediately summoned the ancient war book. "Master, did you call me?" The ancient book of war flew in and asked, "Do you know of any formations that can guide death energy?" Li Xiandao asked, "Guiding death energy?" The ancient war book frowned. "There was a guest just now." Li Xiandao briefly explained the situation. The ancient book of war immediately thought of a great formation and said, "I have a Yellow Springs formation here, which is very suitable for guiding death energy and expelling it. The Yellow Springs formation is the most suitable." "Send me the information about the Yellow Springs formation," Li Xiandao immediately said. The ancient war book immediately transmitted a message to Li Xiandao. Upon receiving the information, Li Xiandao immediately examined it and discovered that the Yellow Springs Grand Array was a lost formation. In this world, apart from ancient war books, very few people knew it, and even those who did possess it often had incomplete versions, or were simplified by later generations, greatly reducing its power. This kind of formation was of little help to Xiandao because it no longer had the function of guiding death energy. Death energy is actually a good thing for cultivation, at least few people can use it, or don't know how to guide it. Master can consider this point, the ancient book of war said. Death energy can be used for cultivation? Xiandao asked in surprise, as this was the first time he had ever heard such a thing. Of course, death energy is also a kind of energy. In the laws of immortality, the 5 elements, time, space and so on are all righteous laws. But where there is righteousness, there is evil. Slaughter, death, depravity and so on are all part of the laws and are very powerful, Xiaoqi explained. The so-called righteous path and the heretical path are merely distinctions made by people based on their preferences. In essence, the laws themselves have no hierarchy. If we categorize them according to those who have attained enlightenment, then the 5 elements Great Tao must be the most numerous and the best. But in reality, the 5 elements are merely the foundation of all laws, though not as lofty as some claim. But you really can't do without them, the ancient war book also said. Xiandao listened silently, then asked, then how do we utilize death energy? If death energy could be used for cultivation, Xiandao wouldn't want to waste it. He was currently lacking energy to improve himself. At the foot of Mount Lu is a 6th grade immortal vein, but a large part of it has been divided up by the 4 major mausoleums. Xiandao cannot compete with the dead. Moreover, the Heaven and Earth Bank was in a state of concealment before. Once it began to absorb spiritual energy on a large scale and was discovered, causing a great war, Xiandao would also have a headache. Now that he can use this death energy as energy, Xiandao's cultivation will definitely advance further. For Xiandao, the only thing lacking in the 9 levels of the celestial immortal realm was energy. The ancient war book swayed its body and said, I don't know about that. Xiandao looked at Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi said, there are records of this in the Universal Library, but they're very obscure books, buried at the very bottom. You probably haven't even noticed them. Go take a look. Xiandao immediately took a step forward, disappearing from the trading hall and appearing in the Universal Library. In the Universal Library, countless book spirits lived carefree lives. They were not surprised at all by Xiandao's sudden appearance, and some even greeted him warmly. Xiandao smiled and nodded, then his immense spiritual power spread out. This time, he was completely different from before. After breaking through to the celestial immortal realm, Xiandao's spiritual power reached a terrifying level. With one scan, he knew everything around him. Xiandao discovered the book that recorded how to absorb death energy. Death Finger. This is a technique for absorbing death energy and comprehending the laws of death. When the death energy reaches a critical point, it can be gathered on the fingertip and pointed out, directly injecting the extremely concentrated death energy into the enemy's body, causing the opponent to die instantly. This is a very powerful technique, but it is also very demanding, which is why it has been forgotten. After all, not everyone can absorb death energy. Xiandao took the manual back to the trading hall, carefully read through it, memorized it, and planned to cultivate it. His swordsmanship is now so powerful that he has been able to integrate all sword techniques into one style across the 9 heavens and 10 earths. I am the immortal slayer of the mortal realm. This power is very strong, and it will gradually increase as Xiandao continues to cultivate, so he doesn't need to worry. However, after mastering this sword technique, Xiandao also needs a new trump card to prepare for unforeseen circumstances. The Death Finger is this trump card. After all, not everyone can absorb death energy. Even immortals have a very small chance of encountering death energy. That's why Xiandao chose this as his trump card. Let's go out and set up the Yellow Springs formation now, Xiandao said. Chapter 618 Absorbing Death Energy. Part 2. The Yellow Springs formation, as the name suggests, is a formation that sends people to the Yellow Springs. The moment the Grand Formation was activated, a mighty yellow river surged forth, relentlessly absorbing all the death energy around it. At that time, All Void will need to do is stand in the Great Formation, and its death energy will be drained. Once the death aura is gone, he can come back to life. Of course, the Yellow Springs Formation is a long-lost formation, and its power should not be underestimated. Moreover, to fully activate its power, a lot of resources are needed to set up the formation. Xiandao didn't need such a grand setup. He only needed to arrange the part of the Yellow Springs Formation that absorbed death energy. So when Xiandao left the Heaven and Earth Bank and arrived at Lushan, he saw the huge, undulating mountains all around him, and the tombstones erected, all belonging to the people who had died in the four major powers. The deathly aura here is also very strong, far exceeding Xiandao's imagination. Perhaps I can absorb the death energy here as well, Xiandao murmured. He had his own goal and didn't waste any words. There weren't many people guarding the four major cemeteries. Recently, the northern underworld region had been going through a turbulent period, and the attention of these four major forces had been drawn away, so they weren't paying enough attention to the cemeteries. The cemetery was guarded by two elderly immortals, one in front and one behind, who were responsible for its safety. They can't guard against Xiandao. Xiandao is now at the heavenly immortal realm and can remain completely undetected unless he makes a huge noise. Under the watchful eyes of the two true immortals, Xiandao began to inscribe array talismans one after another on the ground beneath a cemetery, like branding them deep underground. Once activated, they could be turned on. One array talisman after another appeared and was driven deep into the ground. Without alerting the guards, Xiandao drove 999 array talismans deep into the ground of this cemetery, exactly according to the requirements of the Yellow Springs array. In the subsequent 3 cemeteries, Xiandao followed the exact same method, quietly amassing wealth by embedding these array talismans deep underground, connecting them into a single network that could be fully activated with a single touch. After we finished doing all that, the sky darkened, and the sunset descended, turning the sky a fiery red, which was incredibly beautiful. Xiandao stood in the center of Lushan Mountain, looking around calmly, and said, "It's time to activate the Yellow Springs Formation." Although it has been simplified, it is still essentially the Yellow Springs Formation and has not deviated from the core of this formation. Unlike other formations that have inherited some of the functions of the Yellow Springs Formation, they have long since lost any connection with it. Master, be careful when absorbing death energy after activating the Yellow Springs array, the ancient warbook said worriedly. Don't worry. Xiandao smiled confidently. He had thoroughly mastered that technique and knew it by heart, so he wasn't worried about himself at all. Void, come out and help dispel the death aura for you, Xiandao instructed. Inside the Heaven and Earth Bank, Su Wu's spirit jolted, and he immediately got up and rushed towards Xiandao's direction. After leaving the Heaven and Earth Bank, Su Wu stood before Xiandao, looking at the surrounding cemetery and rows of tombstones, and asked in confusion, "Is this where you exorcise death energy?" Xiandao nodded, pointed to the center, and said, "You just stand here, don't go anywhere, and don't control the death energy in your body. The death energy will be absorbed naturally later." Su Wu stood obediently in the position designated by Xiandao, waiting for Xiandao's next move. He secretly hoped that once the deathly aura was dispelled, his memories would return. After arranging the void, Xiandao arrived at the source of the formation, in front of a mound without a tombstone, and slowly stepped down. Thump! The entire Lushan mountain trembled slightly, followed by a fierce wind, lightning, and thunder. Deep underground in the 4 cemeteries, array runes began to glow and connect with each other. Rumble! Layers of death energy were swept up and, under the manipulation of the Yellow Springs Grand Array, incomplete version, erupted wildly. The deathly gray aura permeated the surroundings, causing the immortals guarding the tomb to be terrified. Even a single breath would bring them bad luck. What happened? I don't know. It was fine just a moment ago, and now it's like this. This is death energy, it's so dense, I can't even see anything 5 meters away. Wasn't the death energy suppressed deep underground by the immortal veins? How could it suddenly erupt? I don't know. The only thing I know is that we have to report this to our superiors and have them send someone to deal with it. This deathly aura is terrifying. Every time I take a breath, I feel like I lose a third of my life force. I'm a true immortal. The immortals guarding the tomb were so frightened that they ran away as fast as they could. They didn't dare to go into the cemetery to take a closer look. At this moment, the 4 cemeteries were empty, with no living people, only dead people. Even Xiandao has become a dead man. The 4 cemeteries contain the remains of countless people, all of whom were quite powerful. Those with weaker strength could not be buried there. The cemeteries are suppressed by immortal veins, and are usually filled with a deathly aura. However, due to the suppression of the immortal veins, the deathly aura will only be released on specific days. But today is not a so-called special day. The full-scale eruption of death energy was quite fierce and imposing, but fortunately, Xiandao was physically strong. He sat down cross-legged like a clay Buddha, silent and solemn, with one finger raised in front of his chest. After countless bursts of death energy erupted, they were all guided into his body by Xiandao, instantly suppressing his life force. That's why it's said that Xiandao is also a dead man. The difference was that, as time passed, 3 minutes later, Xiandao's vitality began to recover, and the death energy in his body had nowhere to go, beginning to converge towards Xiandao's index finger. Xiandao breathed a sigh of relief at this moment, looked at the void, and said, "You can relax now." Refining the death finger is definitely not that simple. This is just the beginning. Xiandao frantically absorbed the immortal energy of the 6th grade immortal vein to improve his strength. Boom. The next second, within the void's body, bursts of death energy erupted. All that was drawn out entered Xiandao's body along with the operation of the formation, and then converged at his index finger. A finger pointing at death, that's more like it. The death energy in the void is still much denser. The death energy in these 4 cemeteries looks plentiful, but in terms of quality, it can't compare to the void's, Xiandao remarked. He was now starting to take advantage of the void as well. "You're not a lot of dead people, are you? I lack death energy. I'll take as much as you have. Spit it all out." Xiandao opened his eyes, and they turned gray, which was very strange. Rumble. Layers of death energy erupted from the void's body, detaching from it and being forcibly stripped away by the Yellow Springs array. After being freed from this deathly aura, the void gradually regained its vitality. This dense deathly aura was absorbed by Xiandao with his mouth wide open, accepting everything without hesitation. Chapter 619 Peak Celestial Immortal. Part 1. Xiandao absorbed the death energy, turning his entire body a deathly gray color that permeated the surroundings, transforming the area around him into a vortex of death. Xiandao's true strength lies in the fact that, despite being engulfed by death energy, he always managed to maintain a sliver of spiritual consciousness within his spiritual platform, allowing him to remain calm and suppress the death energy even in the most extreme circumstances. Rumble. The billowing death energy was absorbed, while the billowing immortal energy surged and boiled like a heat wave, immensely powerful and oppressive to the surroundings, making it hard to believe. The 4 cemeteries were completely shaken. Many corpses were buried there, containing a huge amount of death energy. Perhaps they could not compare with the void death energy in terms of quality, but Xiandao accepted them all because of their sheer quantity. With increased quantity, the lack of quality can be compensated for, and Xiandao can also improve himself. It's also thanks to the fact that the 4 major powers are currently focused on the uproar surrounding the death of Emperor Baiqiu in the northern underworld, and have no time to pay attention to the mausoleum. Of course, if there's nothing wrong, no one will pay attention to the cemetery. After all, it has been peaceful for tens of thousands of years, so who would focus their attention on a bunch of dead people? This benefited Xiandao, who was able to absorb the death energy to his heart's content, comprehend the power of death, and improve himself. At the same time, he forced all the death energy into his left index finger. Because Xiandao held a sword in his right hand and concentrated the death finger on his left index finger, the distribution was very even. Death. The end of everything. Death can make a person disappear completely from this world. No matter how glorious or beautiful one was in life, in the end one cannot escape death. No matter how beautiful or stunning you are, in the end you are nothing but a skeleton in a painting. No matter how powerful or domineering you are, in the end you are nothing but a legend in the mouths of the world. Death can make all exciting things mundane, and can turn all calculations, schemes, and grand ambitions into nothingness. This is the true meaning of death. Xiandao silently comprehended the truth. With each bit of understanding he gained, a trace of death energy was forced into his index finger. As Xiandao continued to comprehend, he gained more and more understanding of the true meaning of death, and the death energy was quickly squeezed into his index finger. At this moment, Xiandao was half alive and half dead. Like a god or a demon, it's unbelievable. Xiandao's understanding of the true meaning of death only forced half of the death energy in. The other half did not obey the command of this true meaning of death. Xiandao frowned and continued to delve deeper into his comprehension. His prophetic talent was fully activated as he analyzed the true meaning of death. Death is not only the end of all things, but also the beginning of all things. Death and rebirth are separated by a fine line. Death can endure, and so can rebirth. Many people know that death is the end, but they don't know that at the end of death is rebirth. Too many masters want to live a second life. The second life is terrifying and powerful, but very few can understand rebirth when death comes. Xiandao understood. Death and rebirth are complementary. Or rather, death and life are two sides of the same coin, inescapable. Where there is life, there is death, and where there is death, there is life. Upon realizing this, half of the death energy on Xiandao's body was quickly squeezed into his index finger. Thump. Xiandao's index finger quickly turned gray, filled with death energy, containing the true meaning of death that Xiandao had comprehended. Once it was unleashed, it could instantly annihilate a person's life. At the same time, Xiandao's cultivation was also rapidly improving. At this moment, the surging immortal energy and death energy from the 6th grade immortal vein at the foot of Mount Lu were mixed together and absorbed by Xiandao, allowing him to directly advance to the 9th level of the heavenly immortal realm. Xiandao stood up, looked around, his eyes flashing with a sharp light, then looked down at his left index finger. With a slight movement, his index finger returned to its original state. The Yellow Springs Grand Array, Remnant Array, also slowly dissipated. What Xiandao had driven into the depths of the earth was just an array talisman, not something that would last forever. Once the death energy within the void's body was completely dispelled, these array talismans would disappear. By then, no one will know that such a thing happened in the 4 major cemeteries. Xiandao felt the immense, surging power within his body, took a deep breath, and was very satisfied. Now, he has only a little ability to protect himself in the immortal realm. The next second, Xiandao looked into the void, standing there blankly, motionless. Has all the death energy in your body been dispelled? Xiandao asked as he walked over. Suwu raised his head and said blankly, the death energy in my body has been absorbed, but I still can't remember who I am. This is something that troubles him greatly. His life force has been absorbed, but he still can't remember who he is or where he came from. He had originally thought he could awaken his memories when the death energy was absorbed, but the greater his expectations, the greater his disappointment. So he seems very dull now. Xiandao sighed and said, memories aren't so easy to recover. Take it slow. I've absorbed the death energy from your body, leaving only life force. As you slowly recover your strength, you might even awaken your memories when you reach your peak. Suwu nodded and said, that's the only way. Xiandao wanted to say something more, but his ears suddenly twitched as he heard many people rushing towards them from a great distance. The people from the 4 major powers have arrived. Let's go back to the Heaven and Earth Bank, Xiandao said decisively. It must have been the true immortal gods who noticed the anomaly and reported it, and the 4 major forces immediately rushed over. Xiandao did not want to have a conflict with them. This was originally their ancestral land, and Xiandao had set up a grand formation here without informing them, which was already in the wrong. Fortunately, Xiandao did not damage any of the corpses in the 4 cemeteries. Instead, he absorbed their dense death energy, allowing the immortal energy of the 4 cemeteries to nourish the corpses instead of continuing to suppress the death energy. The 4 major powers arrived at their own graves, only to be stunned by what they saw. In the cemetery, cherry blossoms were in full bloom, their white petals dancing in the wind. Every tomb was intact, and the celestial aura in the cemetery was several times stronger than before. What exactly happened? The people from the 4 major forces looked at each other in bewilderment and began to go in to inspect their own mausoleums. The entire cemetery was inspected, but no abnormalities were found. Not a single grave had been disturbed, and there were no signs of activity whatsoever. But something must have happened in the cemetery to make the surrounding trees and flowers bloom so brightly, exuding an ethereal aura. Reinforce the defenses. Report any discoveries immediately. This was the only order the 4 major powers could give. Since they couldn't find anything else unusual, all they could do was strengthen their guard and leave with a belly full of questions. Meanwhile, at the Heaven and Earth Bank, Xiandao sent Su Wu to cultivate and recover his life force, while he himself received a message from Xiaoqi. Chapter 623 Green Hats. Part 2. Xiaoqi told Xiandao that a new guest had arrived. Xiandao exclaimed in surprise, "We already have new guests so quickly." The matter of the void was only half resolved when new guests arrived. "You still have to serve this guest," Xiaoqi said with a mischievous smile. Xiandao became interested and asked, "If I must receive them, they must be someone of great importance." Xiaoqi chuckled and said, "Do you remember when you were in the 9 heavens and 10 earths, after the 7th mountain peak was unsealed, you could make your own pocket watch? Back then, you made a green pocket watch." Xiandao was taken aback, and asked with a strange expression, "You mean this pocket watch has found a customer?" Xiaoqi nodded firmly, then sighed and said, "It's terrifyingly green." Xiandao couldn't help but click his tongue and said, "Then let's go see him." Xiaoqi nodded and followed Xiandao to the trading hall. Inside the trading hall, Xiandao awaited the arrival of his guests. He had only made a pocket watch on a whim, and he never expected that someone would actually get it. There is no shortage of green in this world. A moment later, a middle-aged man dressed in fine clothes and with a composed demeanor walked in. Looking at Xiandao and Xiaoqi, he asked with a serious expression, "Who are you?" "Welcome to the Heaven and Earth Bank, where you can trade anything in the world, as long as you can afford the price," Xiandao said calmly. "Heaven and Earth Bank." The middle-aged man fell silent. He suddenly remembered the green pocket watch he had obtained before. The voice inside the pocket watch was also telling him that going to Heaven and Earth Bank could resolve his confusion. "I didn't crush the green pocket watch," the middle-aged man said hesitantly. Xiandao raised an eyebrow and looked at Xiaoqi. If he hadn't crushed the pocket watch, he couldn't get in. Xiaoqi smiled and said, "Think about it carefully, are you sure you didn't crush it?" The middle-aged man paused, lost in his memories. The immortal realm, the northern underworld, the Cloud Heaven sect. The middle-aged man was named Zhou Tianan. He came from a poor family but was very talented. He became a disciple of the Yuntian sect in his youth, and then rose to prominence step by step. He had no resources, no background, and rose to prominence step by step. He didn't make any sudden leaps like a genius, nor did he stand still. After 10,000 years, he became an immortal. What changed him was the night he became a celestial being. The leader of the Yuntian sect died suddenly, and a new leader had to be chosen. Everyone else had supporters, but Zhou Tianan did not. He immediately wanted to give up and not compete for the position. However, the daughter of the previous sect leader, who was hailed as the most beautiful woman in the Yuntian sect, found him and said she wanted to marry him, be a good wife and mother, and fully support Zhou Tianan in his bid for the sect leader position. What Zhou Tianan paid in return was to become this woman's appendage and a mouthpiece. Zhou Tianan agreed. He came from humble beginnings, cultivated diligently for 10,000 years, and had few romantic relationships. Now the most beautiful woman in the Yuntian sect has found him and offered him incredibly generous terms, which has tempted him. Then Zhou Tianan revealed his strength, which he had been holding back for 10,000 years, and defeated 3 competitors in one fell swoop, becoming the sect leader. Then he married the most beautiful woman in the Yuntian sect. 7 months later, their first child was born. Full term and healthy. But Zhou Tianan always felt that something was wrong. However, that was the honeymoon phase, and he didn't think too much about it. A year later, his second child was born, and 2 years later, his third child was born. After the birth of his 3 children, Zhou Tianan sensed something was wrong, because before the birth of his third child, he had been in seclusion in a secret chamber, breaking through to the peak of the celestial immortal realm. His wife came in briefly, and the 2 of them were intimate, but Zhou Tianan clearly remembered that they did not go all the way. There's something wrong with this third child. This matter is like a thorn stuck in my heart, causing me great discomfort. He's an honest man, but you can't treat him like this. Not long ago, he received a green pocket watch. The color of the watch was too bright for him, so after thinking about it, he put it away. Over the next few days, he continued his investigation and discovered many clues suggesting that the 3 children might not be his. That's the most flamboyant one. To outsiders, he was a high-ranking figure, the new leader of the Yuntian sect, whose wife was the daughter of the previous leader, the most beautiful woman in the Yuntian sect, and who had given birth to 3 children. He had a harmonious family and was simply a winner in life. But deep down, Zhou Tianan knew that this family was about to be destroyed and its members killed. He didn't even dare to continue the investigation. If it turned out to be solid evidence, he would lose all face. So he came to the Heaven and Earth Bank instead of investigating the matter as the leader of the Cloud Heaven sect, because he didn't want others to know. As for the green pocket watch, he drank too much last night, drowning his sorrows in alcohol, and without controlling his intake, he crushed it after passing out. Zhou Tianan remembered, and his expression calmed down. Since he was the one who crushed it, then so be it. I don't want to do the deal anymore. Zhou Tianan turned and left. He felt that he shouldn't let outsiders know about his affairs. Who knows if you would spread it around? Then let him see you out. But let me just remind you that once you leave this time, you will forget everything about the Heaven and Earth Bank and will never come back here again, Xiandao said calmly. He wasn't afraid of people like that. Zhou Tianan paused, turned to look at Xiandao, and asked, "Will you keep this a secret for me?" "We will sign a contract, and a confidentiality agreement can be added to the contract," Xiandao said. Zhou Tianan turned back, sat opposite Xiandao, and took a deep breath. He has mixed feelings right now. This is a very complicated matter for anyone. Even immortals are no exception. "Speak, what do you want to trade?" Xiandao asked calmly. The thought of possibly being cuckolded 3 times filled Zhou Tianan with rage. His eyes reddened as he asked, "I want to know, are my 3 children mine?" Xiandao looked at him and said, "Since this is your first time here, I'll tell you for free." Zhou Tianan looked at Xiandao nervously. "None of them." Xiandao's ruthless words made Zhou Tianan clutch his heart, his face contorted in pain. "I hate it so much." Zhou Tianan roared, spitting out a mouthful of blood from his heart, looking extremely miserable. None of the 3 children were involved, meaning he was a sucker from beginning to end, practically branded with those words on his forehead. An honest man. How could Zhou Tianan possibly accept this? "You help me find out who the adulterer is, and I'll make him pay a bloody price," Zhou Tianan said through gritted teeth. "What can you offer in return?" Xiandao asked. 1,000,000 immortal crystals, top grade. Zhou Tianan held up one finger and said firmly, 100 high-grade immortal crystals. Do you want us to help you get to this adulterer, or do you want us to kill him along the way? Xiandao asked very carefully. 1,000,000 high-grade immortal crystals to kill this adulterer, Zhou Tianan said coldly.